Hello, everyone. I'm Jordy, the music director here at Spinnaker Radio, and I'm here with Primo. How you guys doing today?
Great, very good.
Doing good.
Awesome. So usually I like to start off just asking about the band's sound in general, just to give the people a feel for what they're going to be listening to. While I was listening to the music that you guys made, I realized that it's very eclectic, rooted in rock, but like there's a lot of classic rock. Some things felt very surfer. Some things felt very indie, even a little psychedelic. So if you guys could like speak to kind of the sound that you guys tend to go for.
Well, you kind of nailed it a little bit because we don't really like we talk about it all the time. We're like, what do we like?
Yeah,
write for ourselves on our website. Like,
we have a hard time figuring it out.
We've just been putting punk rock and roll, just kind of the leading ones there.
Yeah, because he's a punk guy. Like these guys are have pretty heavily rooted in punk. I'm pretty heavily rooted like in like the early '60s, kind of like Allman Brothers era music and hard rock. So these guys are kind of like in my style and like how it works out.
Yeah, so we all kind of mash it up a bit. Xander has a lot of surfer influence on his music taste too.
Yeah.
So we all kind of collided all together. So
That's
we don't know how to describe it in one small phrase. So we just say punk rock and roll. It kind of comes roughly everything.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely like a good mix of stuff. Like there was one song I was listening to where like it was like straight classic rock, and then immediately after it was like the most kind of calming indie like song ever. So it was like really interesting to kind of get a good mix in there, and I really like that. But speaking on like sort of the different influences you guys have, do you want to go into that? Like what people or like what things influence
Absolutely.
your music?
You want to start over here?
Yeah. So what was your question again?
Yeah. So just
Oh, my biggest inspirations. So, definitely AC/DC from the beginning. Like I always loved AC/DC from back when I was 6 and 7 years old, and that kind of built my music taste. So that started my rock foundation. That's how I deviated into the rock area. And then after a few years, I started like going into different segments of that. So like the indie part, the alternative part, the punk part, and then I discovered bands like Nirvana and Foo Fighters and Green Day. And I was like, wow, I really love the sound of that, and the drums are so great, and how they all mix together with the music. So that's kind of my foundation, how my music taste began. So that's
awesome.
where I stand.
I kind of started listening to like pop. My mom always drove one of them soccer mom bands, and I was like 2011. I started playing guitar, and I realized I really liked like Kesha and like the pop. And then my dad. We went to like our first punk show, right? And we were in the mosh pit, and I realized that was my favorite kind of music. We saw No Effects. We saw I think we saw the Misfits. We saw a couple like pretty good bands.
You're a big Days and Days fan.
Oh, and I love Days and Days. I just got a Days and Days tattoo.
Wow,
they're
that's
like
so
folk
sick.
punk. Yeah, they scream with the acoustic guitars kind of thing. Oh, picking on it.
Nice. That's awesome.
Me over here. I started out when I was younger with rap, and then kind of that was like what all my friends were listening to. That's kind of like the common stuff. It was like I loved rap, and I was like low key a big Drake fan. And then I started listening to my dad's CDs, and he had like a Steve Miller Band CD. This is a pretty common one, and I listened to that. I'm like, oh, all right, that's cool. So I just decided I'd delve, and I think after a long time, I got huge into Jimi Hendrix, so I got a Jimi Hendrix tattoo.
Nice, awesome.
And that kind of started my guitar playing. I loved Stevie Ray Vaughan, like that heavy blues stuff. And as time went on, my influences really rooted like in the early to late '60s. So I was listening to the Allman Brothers. Like I listened to the Allman Brothers super heavy. I want to get an Allman Brothers tattoo.
Yeah.
I really like Leonard Skinner, like the Southern rock music, and I'm even gonna get Days and Days tattoo because I like Days and Days.
You only have tattoos.
You're gonna get one. and now I'm like super into like 80s hard rock Van Halen.
Nice.
I love Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen's one of my idols right now. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it seems like you guys have like a good like handle on music history too, and just kind of like picking up on the influences, like even what you were talking about with like pop, because like it's pop, or like rap, but when you kind of like get into it, you kind of like start to discover like, oh, pop came from post-punk, which came from punk,
Yeah.
so it's like a cool little like thing that's going on. So I love to hear that.
Lifelines of like how like the newer music that we listen to got to where it is today all the time.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I'm super into myself like post punk, and I just because it's like the perfect bridge kind of between like the indie stuff out of the 2000s and stuff to like the punk that was coming out of late 70s, early 80s. So yeah, definitely. And I love that you guys are like doing that too. And I can hear that a lot in the music. And I think it really like holds up. So speaking again, back to like kind of your process, how are your influences? Like, are your influences influencing your process at all? Like, how does the whole process kind of unfold when you guys are making music together?
That's an interesting question. I don't think that like we particularly like use like, oh well, we need a bridge chorus. This like I don't think we do that compared to songs that we have listened to. I think we just kind of like we don't really follow a particular formula to any of the old influences. We just kind of use like he kind of used like a drum riff from like something he likes, like the Foo Fighters, and then he'll kind of like create something that has like
noise.
That's like noisy and like has like an obvious scale pattern.
Yeah.
Because that is like it's like what punk does. Like it's a pretty punk thing to have.
Yeah, just
to go right up the scale and stuff like that. And then I do a lot of like that like shredder wizardy stuff because that's like
very
almost
magical.
That's all the stuff I love.
Yeah,
and
well,
so
he mentioned Van Halen earlier too, and I think that we have our album out right now, 2020, which is great. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Yeah, there's the CD. We're actually making CDs right now. But with a lot of the new stuff, not a lot of people know about the new stuff, but there's a lot of inspiration from Van Halen, from Sam on this part, and it gets that kind of more 80s rock kind of vibe to it.
We still got our blast drum beats and his bass, and then there's some guitar tapping in there. But like really the way we make it is we go, well, there needs to be a chorus.
Yep.
And so we like that part. We want it to be catchy, so we definitely like understand like the way it needs to be written is to sound catchy. And if like we're gonna write a song that's very instrumental, we know that it's probably not gonna be super catchy, but it's gonna be real vibey. So we gotta work on that. So we just kind of think of a song and start writing some riffs and stuff and going like, all right, what is this going to turn into? Is this going to turn into an instrumental, or is this going to turn into a song that people are going to like sing to themselves?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting process. We're still figuring it out ourselves, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I mean, yeah, it's hard to like talk about your process when you're like doing it. So I understand that much. But it's interesting because like when you're talking about it, I thought about Velvet Underground because they have like a cool thing with their wall of noise that they do. So like that makes sense. And then like even with like either Black Sabbath, I mean Black Sabbath was like really great. If you guys have heard Paranoid, obviously like that album, it was just based off like really great bass riffs and stuff like that. So definitely some cool stuff, and I like to see like
almost the most important instrument.
Almost.
I mean, so yeah. But also, how did you guys even come together as a band? Like, how did that form?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, so it's me and this guy.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so this guy and I right here. My dad and his dad were both in the same band together. Are still kind of both in the same band together. Wow. I know that sounds weird. My dad broke his arm, so. No. But they were in the same band together when I was like young. I was like how old? Like 13, 14, something like that. And
I was maybe 15. Maybe.
Yeah, so, and he was with his buddy, and we all went up on stage and played, like, I think it was Viva La Vida by Coldplay.
Oh my God.
I couldn't play instruments. I could only play the keys at the time, like, a little bit. I couldn't play anything. And so after that, I was like, well, maybe I should pick up guitar because my dad's in a band. I met some people who I know who play music. And another guy in my dad's band had a son named Luke. And so I had been playing with him, kind of learning guitar off of him and hanging. And I still hang out with Luke. And I actually do a little side stuff with him. And so
I didn't know that.
He later, he was like, I need a drummer. And I was like, oh, I can drum for you. And then I was never able to drive, so I could never go over and play drums because you had a band. Was it Frog Hole?
Oh yeah, we were Frog Hole.
Yeah, it was
we won like a talent show back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Oh, boy.
And so later on, Frog Hole was no more, and I was in a band called. I was in Hef before Primo.
Yeah, Hef.
I was in a band called Hef. You may have heard of them, may not have. And they were kind of like a jazz rock kind of thing. They were
very indie.
Very indie. It was kind of a mix between maybe like Nirvana and the Strokes a little bit. So it was kind of real jazz for you, but also it was real hard. It was good. I liked it. It was a little emotional for me, but I really enjoyed the music. They wrote a lot of it. They did a good job. And then I met him again. I was like, yo, do you want to start something? And he was like, yeah. So he came to my garage and we wrote a bunch of stuff. And then his dad was the drummer for a little bit. Like we were like, yo, can you be the drummer?
I was like, come on, Dad, you got this.
Mr. Shane Martha. He's like, oh yeah, you got a hairy chest and everything. He's just banging around the drums. It was pretty good. And then he was like, I can't. He's like, I have this band with your dad, and I can't. And so I was like, all right, we got to find a drummer so we can boot his dad out. And then
when I come into play.
Yeah, and then we found him, lead singer of Tragic Comedy.
He actually played our first show, like, before we went on stage. Like, he was in a different band.
Yeah, I was in a different band. Yeah. And they were playing with Xander's dad, the hairy chest dude.
Wow.
And, so cool. Yeah, we met there. We met before that.
We met at the music school one time, I think. And then that's when I really met you.
That's when I met you. And then I met you at the Orpheum show with Hef, right?
Yeah.
When he was playing with Hef. So, yeah, I saw them playing before, and then that's when they contacted me through Instagram DM, I think, right? They're like, hey, do you know anybody who can drum? And they also contacted my friend Vasily, who's a drummer in my other band, Tragic Comedy. But he was in another country at the time. So I'm like, I can drum, I can do this. And I was just beginning at the time. I was like a few months into it. So I went over to their studio, their house, and I practiced a little bit. I learned some of the songs, and then we all just, that was day one from there.
Yeah, just kind of worked out.
Beautiful. It seems like it was like a nice little, everything just like sort of fell into place then, which is always really nice to feel as a band, I think, right?
Absolutely.
And so I guess like carrying that energy of like, everything falling, this is your first full-length album. So you want to speak about that? Like, how was creating that? How are you guys feeling about it? All that
this
stuff.
guy recorded and mixed the whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah, I wasn't even at a studio. That was at the Solikaki studio.
He was in my bedroom.
Wow.
Yeah, so we recorded like a bedroom album, and it was all the songs that we had just made to like right in the beginning. We just wrote a bunch of songs so we could go out and play.
We just wanted to get it out there. We wanted to make an album. We wanted our music to be out there so people could listen to it. A good sounding album. So we just knocked it out in my bedroom. Yeah. Set up the drums and microphones, and
we just wanted to put something out. And it's there. The writing process. Like I said, we were just kind of like, let's just make stuff. We made stuff.
Let's go. Woo!
I mean, it didn't take a super long time. Songs are cool, but we just kind of
again.
Primo's 2020 out in all the streaming services.
Yeah, we got our album cover, and we got Clearwater in the '60s on the back.
Yeah, awesome, dude.
So it was really easy process. I mean, not for him at the end.
It was pretty strenuous for me because I had to obviously like engineer every part of the album.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, I enjoy doing that. I love creating music and putting things together, and I'm really proud of this piece, as I call it. It's like an art piece. It's one thing that we all made together.
Yep.
So
and it featured a bunch of like cool stuff. Like I played like a banjo and like a washboard on some of the tracks.
Oh yeah,
and
cool.
you put like a little air horn at the end of the song.
Yeah, there's a little this hidden stuff in there.
Yeah. Of course, more cowbell. We got some cowbell in there.
Oh, sick. So some experimentation. Whose ideas were that? Like, were y'all just like, let's just...
I go. My dad had a bunch of just instruments in his house because we're in like a folk punk group.
He comes with his bag.
Yeah, I just go. I got a bag of stuff. Let's just put it in there. Let's get it going.
Just let you know, we're a group of people who are like, all of us are like in a million bands.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I guess like that's just how musicianship works. I guess. I mean, just like
it's
playing.
Like an untrusted bond type thing, like a family.
Exactly. That's really cool. And it's
know that play music, so they all ask us to play different instruments in different bands.
Yeah.
So, like, we all get involved in some other bands, but like Primo's definitely a solid base. Is priority.
Yeah.
So
that's definitely cool, and you can tell. Yeah, it seems like you guys are like really big musicians first, which is really awesome. And like I also wanted to like kind of go back and when you're talking about your process, how you were just like, we just wanted to make stuff. I just found that really cool because I was actually reading a book recently about like Joy Division and how they made their first album, Unknown Pleasures. And like, that was literally, they did like literally what you guys are doing right now, like as described, because they were basically saying that like some of the best stuff just kind of comes out just like, so amazing. And I'm glad that it worked out for you guys.
We put some songs right now. We put some work into them, but it's like 3 songs we have. We're hoping on recording them soon.
Right.
Maybe a mini release, a little EP release.
Definitely. Well, and also before we end this, did you guys have any shout outs, announcements, or is anything coming up for you guys that you guys want to get out into the public?
We actually have a couple shows coming up. We have one this Saturday at the Neptune's Lounge with his other band, Tragic Comedy, a band called D Prime, and another band called Pretzel Day.
We got one at the Brass Mug.
Yeah, the Brass Mug.
On the
That's
25th.
It's gonna be like a Thanksgiving. There's gonna be food and stuff there. It's gonna be real fun.
Yeah,
A bunch of bands.
That's the 25th, and there's a bunch of bands too in that one. And he and I are in another one of the bands.
Oh yes.
Are you playing anything?
No,
Which
only
one, the Brass
just,
Mug?
Yeah, you're it's only us.
Only
Right?
Primo.
Yeah, and then on December
12th. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're playing a bowling alley actually.
nice.
Oh, yeah, that one's.
It's gonna be ugly Christmas sweater party. It's in,
I love
Yeah.
that. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. You guys were amazing, and I'm excited to see what you guys do for the rest of your careers. Awesome.
oh, thanks.
Also, shout out to the best interviewer in the world.
Yeah,
right
right
here.
here.
Yeah, right here.
Stop it.
Make sure everybody,
Yeah, listens to some
Listens
Primo
to
2020.
We were like the
2020.
8th time.
and come by this at the shows.
And our Instagram at Primo Band. Give us a follow. Facebook Primo727.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, you.
www.primo727.com.
Oh, there's way too much stuff going on.
No, awesome. All right. Cool.